my name is Jez Marshall. I'm an assistant director. I'm registered with the ADA and BEC2, and I work for Dogbite Film Crew, and I also do a lot of freelance work as well. Many years ago, I used to work in the music industry as a musician, and toured Europe and did all sorts of the like, and played big festivals such as Download. During my time in that industry, I met a lot of people who worked on music videos and were film directors and so on and so forth. After many years, I realised that the music industry doesn't pay the bills very well, and I ended up getting a job on World War Z, the Brad Pitt film that was filmed in Falmouth, and had just as much fun in that industry, and realised that was the industry that I wanted to move into, and always had wanted to be in the film industry as well. So I made steps to make sure that I got involved within the film and TV industry. So my qualifications are an H&D in media production and BA honours in applied media. Whilst I was doing that course, I utilised the lecturers, and I utilised the contacts that they had, and networked my proverbial backside off to no end to get work on absolutely anything that I could, and quickly went from being sort of in an intern position at Dogbite to being a reliable and their go-to assistant director, which then led on to TV drama and TV commercials and other such things. Further training is something that is very specific to depending on what department that you work in. With my department, assistant directing, I'm a member of the ADA, which is the Assistant Directors Association, which offers a lot of qualifications that are relevant to the specific job. So health and safety, scheduling qualifications, the BBC safety passport, Becker's action car rig training, so you know how to work with cars if there's car crashes and so on, and first aid is important for the job as well. So a really important piece of software in the arsenal of an assistant director is a piece of scheduling software from EP Scheduling called Movie Magic 6, which is the current version that's on. And what that does is it allows the assistant director to break down the script that they're working on, the first assistant director, and input all of the elements and data into this piece of software, which will then create a strip board, and then that strip board can be moved around within the calendar, and your scenes can be scheduled accordingly and appropriately for the actual production that you'll be working on. So that's an industry standard piece of kit as well. So Lord of the Rings, Prometheus, you name it, they use that piece of software, and it's not cheap. The grip department, who are the people who deal with everything below the camera, so dolly, tracks, dollies, cranes, sticks, or as they're better known, tripods by the general public, and all of that. A lot of grips own their own gear, which means that they get their day rate, and at the same time they can hire out the gear to production, so they can make quite a substantial amount of money for being involved in the project. But for big projects, you've got rental houses or hire houses, such as Arri, Films at 59, Panavision, so on and so forth, and it's just easier and cheaper and more efficient to rent that equipment, whether that be cameras, grip gear, lighting, and so on. So it does depend, but renting is probably the bigger thing for those departments. So regulations on big TV dramas, there's or big films, there's the BBC safety passport, which is a series of standards and a set of standards and training set by the BBC, which needs to be adhered to on set. And so proper risk assessments need to be carried out, any potential hazards and so on and so forth need to be identified, whether it's safe enough to film in a certain place. So that's really the most important thing on set, as well as the first aid kind of regulations and qualifications, just making sure that people are responsible. At the end of the day, you're only making a movie or a TV drama, and it's not worth the lives of the people who work on it. As a producer, I think it depends on the project you're working on and if it's beneficial to the story. There's guys out there and girls who want all the latest kit, and as long as it's used properly, I see there's no harm in that. And there's people out there that I know personally, and people out there that are quite famous, who are quite famous for saying that they don't believe in the new technologies and they like using the old stuff. I think as an AD, it's not really my department to say whether I have an issue with new gear or not. Whatever makes the production run smoothly, and at the same time, whatever is going to be used, you need to make sure that you have some experience or understanding on how that's going to impact the running of the set. So if you're using film, it's expensive to shoot on. Therefore, if you start turning the cameras over and everyone's not quite ready, you need to know to tell the camera guys to hold the roll so that you're not burning through film and costing the production a lot of money. Whereas digital, it's not such a huge deal if you're just turning over and wasting megabytes, because that can always be deleted if it's no use to anyone at the end of the day. Being a freelancer is almost like running a company. So you're responsible for things like, tax and turnover and making sure you're able to pay the bills. But from a company point of view, I know that you have a lot of overheads, so staff, equipment costs, rent on wherever your property is, and making sure that the amount of money coming in from projects cover those costs as well as enable you to make a profit. Being a freelancer is not an easy pastime, whether that's in the film industry or in a trade of any sorts. I think you have to be flexible. You often have to work unsociable hours and for long periods of time. You have to make sure that you know what your rights are and make sure that no one's taking advantage of you, which people will often try and do in the early stage of your career. And you have to decide whether or not what you're agreeing to do is going to be beneficial to your career, as well as at the same time you have to work incredibly hard, because you're only as good as the last job that you have done, and if you don't work hard, they'll find someone else who will. I think is the key to being a freelancer. And also networking and just networking. If you don't have the confidence to go up to people and start talking to them, and you sit at home and wait for the phone to ring, then go work somewhere else. The industry generally, I think, is pretty safe. It's obviously moving into different realms. So you have VOD, or video on demand, is becoming a real big impact on the normal production houses and the normal studios and the older system. On a scale of being actually on the ground floor in production and on set, I don't think the job's going to change a huge amount. The industry's making as much money or more money than it ever has at the moment, and I think with new technologies and the fact that the film industry, unlike the music industry, has embraced change, it should hopefully remain quite fruitful. Cornwall, I think, is in a very exciting position. Recently we obviously had Pulled Up on the BBC, which was a big success, something that I worked on myself. And programs like Doc Martin, which are currently filming at the moment. Cornwall has a good film industry, but it could be better. I think that production companies and facilities who hire crew could do a better job at hiring local crew as permanent crew rather than doing dailies. So dailies are people who just turn up and cover for a couple of days if there's a big scene that needs to be shot. Production companies, especially companies like Dogbite in Cornwall could be, and Western Light could be relied upon to carry productions because there is a know-how and there is a talent and there is a pool of people here that are talented freelancers across the board, from costume, makeup, grips, camera operators and assistant directors and other production specialists. It is what I expected. I don't think the industry is what a lot of people expect. I think from being in the music industry since I was 17 till I was about 28 taught me a lot about the media industries. They're pretty cutthroat. You have to work really, really hard and you have to make the right connections. And if you are bitter, resentful or jealous in any way about what anyone else is doing, then you can find yourself with not many friends and not a lot of work. It's a team effort, but it's an individual effort, which is weird to say because you've got to work with people and you've got to work with people well, and you've got to be a team player because at the end of the day you can't make a movie by yourself or a TV drama by yourself. At the same time, you've got to go out there and put yourself in a position that people need to and want to hire you and not the other person who might be going for your job as well. So there can be a lot of gentle pushing with the people who make decisions to make sure that you're in the right place. I think one of the main things that I'd like to say about people who want to get into the industry is find something that you really want to do in the industry. It's a big old industry and it's not just directors and cameramen that are involved. Finding a department that you like, whether it is the camera department or whether it is a director, then by all means go for that. But you know, looking into what it is that you're good at and what you think you could do and what people would hire you for is a good way to start. And also not being afraid to do something that no one else wants to do. When I started, I had no idea what an AD was and I had no idea what they did. And I quickly made sure that I found out what that was when I was asked to do it on a commercial as a third AD. And I made sure that I did that job as best as I possibly could. And then when people start telling me that I was really good at it, then that's when I took it a little bit more seriously, and I found that I had put myself in a position where it's a job role that not a lot of people like doing. It's a pretty thankless job, and it's an incredibly important job. There's always going to be ADs that are needed. There's not always going to be special effects guys that are needed depending on what project you're working on, and there's not always going to be, props person, or it totally depends on the type of project that you're working on. But you always need someone to schedule it, and you're always going to need someone to run it, and that's what ADs do.